Hello once again everyone, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if this is your first time joining me today. Hi, my name is Hannah. I make a lot of different videos here on YouTube, sometimes story times, sometimes makeup related, jewelry related, a lot of different things, baby related, like today's video. So, if you're interested, feel free to check out the channel, check out my playlist. I like to believe I have a little something for everybody here on the channel. But as you can tell from the title, today we're going to be diving in to my birth story, and oh my goodness, is it a story. So here's the deal. Basically, I had to be induced. Well, I didn't have to be induced, but my doctor basically told me that she kind of recommended that I be induced at 39 weeks because baby was getting a little bit big, a little bit on the big side. It's my first baby. It's easier, and typically baby will come faster, and if, after a certain period of time, a certain amount of hours, if the baby doesn't come, then they can do a C-section. And so I was like, great, okay, let's do it, because, I was just sick, I was tired, I wanted this baby out of me. So at my last doctor's appointment, they were like, okay, cool, we'll induce you at 39 weeks. So I was like, great, sounds good. Now keep in mind, my initial due date was like, well, at first they told me February 20th, and then they moved it to like February 23rd or something like that. I don't know why. Maybe they were just going off baby's size, I don't know. But anyway, so they said, yep, we're gonna induce you at 39 weeks if you're cool with that. And I was like, yep, get this thing out of me. So basically at 39 weeks, February 17th, they were like, come in on February 17th, and we will induce you. We'll start Pitocin. That's what we'll do. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I had to be at the hospital like 15 minutes before midnight on February 17th. So me and my husband got to the hospital at like 11:45 p.m. on February 16th, which was a Sunday, I believe. Yeah, it was a Sunday. It was a Sunday night, so we got there, and then as soon as I got there, checked in, they moved me to a room, hooked me up to all the stuff, and they checked to see how dilated I was. And at my last doctor's appointment, I was like 1.5, I think. And so when I got there, shocker, I was 1.5 still. I wasn't any more than that, which I thought I was having like some light contractions, but I couldn't really tell the difference between those and Braxton Hicks contractions. Now, mind you, I had went in like 2 or 3 days before my induction because I thought that my water had broke. Like, I was having contractions. I thought that I had felt like the gush of water. Like, I thought my water had broke. And when I went in, they were like, they felt and they were like, oh my God, I think your water has broken. So they did the test to see if my water broke, and it was not. So they said, since you're only 2 or 3 days away from your induction, we'll just wait, and then you can just come for your induction like normal. So that's what we ended up doing. So anyway, flash forward back to where we were, getting hooked up to all the stuff that night. And I was convinced I wasn't going to be able to sleep, because how do you sleep through that? Like, how do you sleep through being induced and having somebody come in and check your cervix every so often? Like, you can't really get comfortable and go to sleep. Plus, you've got that cuff on you, your blood pressure cuff, all that stuff. So, like, how would you possibly go to sleep? Like, if you were able to go to sleep while you were in labor and you were induced, or just in labor in general, props to you, because I couldn't do it. Like, I feel like I got close a couple of times, but I couldn't do it. Anyway, Dustin didn't get any sleep either, which was fine. We didn't really think that we would. We stayed up the day before so that we could, we slept in the daytime that Sunday so that, throughout Monday morning and all that, I would be fine and not be super tired. So anyway, everything was going fine, and they didn't want to start the Pitocin until I was at least at a 3, I think. So they did I don't remember what medicine it is that they put inside you so that it'll help you to dilate more, but they did that to try to get me to a 3. And so finally at one point I was at a 3, and as soon as they started the Pitocin, I was like feeling it, man. Like I was feeling the cramps. But the crazy thing is that I did not have any cramps in my belly whatsoever. They were all in my back, which sucked. I feel like front contractions probably hurt way, way worse than the back contractions and the back labor that I was having, but it was super real. So anyway, by the time I was at, I think 4 centimeters, my water still had not broken. I was just kind of chilling there with some contractions. My water still had not broken. So my doctor had made it to the hospital by that time. I want to say it was like 7 in the morning by that point, 6 or 7 o'clock. And my doctor had made it to the hospital by that point. And, you know, my nurse came in and she said, the doctor wants to come in and break your water here in about 10 or 15 minutes. She said, so are you going to want the epidural now, or are you going to wait till after? Because she said, if you don't do it right now, you're going to have to wait about an hour or 2, because they had a delivery that they were doing, or like 2 back-to-back deliveries. And so, they would be tied up because they only had one anesthesiologist there at that particular time. So she would be tied up with the other deliveries if I didn't want the epidural right then and there. So I was like, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. Now keep in mind, this was what I was most scared of. I was most terrified out of anything about getting an epidural, because I've heard horror stories of like the pain of the needle going into your spine and all that stuff. So I was horrified, okay? Like when she was giving it to me in my back, I was sitting there and my legs were like shaking like this, and I couldn't stop it because I was so nervous. That combined with the contractions that I was feeling. Now keep in mind, if it weren't for the fact that I wouldn't be able to get the epidural for another hour or 2, I wouldn't have went ahead and got it, because I wasn't in that much pain. But they told me as soon as your water is broken, the pain will get so much worse so fast. So that's why I went ahead and did it. I was planning on waiting a little bit longer, but since I didn't really, I mean, I had a choice, but if I wanted the epidural, I didn't really have a choice, because, you know, you don't want to wait until you're too far to the point where it's not going to help you. So I was like, okay, let's go ahead and do this. But anyway, when they gave me the epidural, it was literally fine. Like, I didn't even hardly feel it. She was right. As soon as, because they do a topical anesthetic before they do the needle. So, or actually, I think it's a topical anesthetic and then an injection of like numbing stuff. It's like, they told me it was like the stuff that they shoot in your gums when you get a cavity filled at the dentist, that kind of thing. So that's all I felt, was the topical anesthetic going on and then the shot in my back, like when you get at the dentist. So I didn't actually feel the needle of the epidural going in or anything. I felt nothing. I just felt that initial sting of the anesthetic and I was good to go. So that was that. And then like 5 minutes later, after all that was done, doctor came in. She broke my water. I didn't even feel it. I had no idea what she was doing in there. But she broke it, and I really didn't know that. I saw the doctor leave after that, and I asked the nurse, I was like, did she break my water? And she was like, yeah, your water's broken. And I was like, cool. So anyway, it was taking a little bit for the epidural to kick in, which they told me it would. They told me it would like start at my feet and kind of just travel up my body. Well, probably about an hour later, I was having some good contractions going. I was dilating further, but I was only getting relief on the left side of my body. My right side of my body, I was still feeling the contractions. I was numb like down there, but I was not numb in my back. I could feel the back contractions. Every single contraction, I could feel it in my right side. I couldn't feel anything from my hips down, on either side, but I could feel, well, I take that back. I could kind of feel part of my right leg, but I couldn't feel either of my feet. I couldn't feel any of my left side, but I could feel like from the hip up on like in my back where the contractions were. And it was getting intense, okay? It was getting intense. I don't think I started crying until I was like 8 or 9 centimeters dilated. And then it wasn't like screaming. I wasn't like screaming in pain or anything. I wasn't really making any noise. I was just internally trying to deal with it. But when they were turning me over on each side is when they think it happened, but my initial epidural came out. So it wasn't like in my spine anymore. It was just kind of in my back a little bit. And so they had to, before they figured that out, before they realized, they did a couple of boluses in it to try to help, to try to fix it, but it didn't work because it wasn't in my spine. But eventually they were like, do you want to just take it out and try again? And I was like, yeah. So eventually they did that, and they were like, oh, well, it was barely in your back, that's why it wasn't working. So they just redid the whole thing, and they just gave me another epidural. Well, that didn't fix it, and I think personally it was because I was too far. Like at that point I was 8 or 9 centimeters getting up there, and I was too far for it to do anything. Like, yeah, the bolus helped. It felt good in the moment because it feels cold going down your back. It feels nice when you get a bolus of that medicine, but it was just not helping where it needed to help. I mean, right, it helped where it needed to help. When I gave birth, actually, I didn't feel it, thank you, Jesus. But these back contractions, I felt everything on my right side. I felt every contraction, everything on my right side. My left side was cool, thank God. If my left side, if I could have felt my left side, I don't think I would have tapped out. I would have been screaming. But no, so that's what happened with the epidural. I did throw up a couple of times while I was in labor. We think it was because like if I sat up too quickly, because they were turning me back and forth, you know, and if I turned too quickly or if they sat me up too quickly, I would just puke, which thank God I had the best nurse in the world, and my mom was there and Dustin was there, so they were all helping me. They had like wet rags and stuff. They had the little throw up bags, you know, to help me with that. But that was really terrible. Like that was the worst part to me, was the throwing up because of sitting up too quickly. I don't think it was because of the pain necessarily. I think it was just because I sat up too quickly, and with that medicine in me and all that, it just did not jive. Like it didn't g-haul at all. So that happened, and that sucked, but I made it through that, you know. After they got done turning me and all that, I was good. I didn't throw up anymore. But yeah, I got to 8 or 9. I want to say I got to 9, and I kind of stalled out a little bit there. Like not crazy, but for like 30 minutes I was at 9. And so the girl came in and checked me, the nurse came in and checked me, and she was like, okay, you're at 9, like we just have to wait a little bit longer and then you'll be ready to go. And so I was like, okay. And like obviously I can't feel anything going on down there. I can only feel the contractions. And then as soon as she walked out the door, okay, I'm talking about that minute that she walked out the door, contractions started coming faster, 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 like there was no break between these contractions. When I was at 9, there was a break between these contractions, or when I was getting to 9, there was breaks between the contractions. They were little breaks, but they were breaks. So as soon as she walked out of the room and there were no breaks between contractions, and I started feeling pressure, like it wasn't crazy, it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm about to push. It was like I just started feeling this subtle pressure kind of descending, and I was like, okay, we need to call the nurse back. So I pressed the button. My mom went out in the hall and found her and was like, come back here. So she checked and she was like, oh my God, I feel his head, let's get the doctor. And she was like, okay, I'm gonna get the doctor. So she ran out to get the doctor. The doctor was like down the hall. I could hear her scurrying down the hall, And my other nurse that had been helping me was like, okay, she got my legs in the stirrups and she was like, let's go ahead and start pushing because it'll probably take you a little bit because you've never pushed before. So let's go ahead and start pushing since the doctor is going to be a few minutes. And I was like, okay. So I started pushing and she was like, oh my God, stop pushing. And I was like, okay. Because I didn't know if I was pushing or not. I just was trying. I didn't know, but because I couldn't feel nothing, but I was like, okay, I'll try. And then when I did, she was like, stop. And so she was like, where is the doctor? And she ran out and the doctor was in the hallway doing something. And she was like, get in here. So then my doctor comes like running into the room, you know, gets herself geared up and all the stuff. And she's like, okay, let's push. And I was like, all right. And I pushed like, I want to say it was like 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times I pushed, and then he was out. So I pushed for probably like 5 minutes, 5 or 6 minutes. My son was born at 3:33 in the afternoon, so it took me like 15 hours and 30 minutes-ish to give birth, which I've been told is pretty good for your first kid. So that was cool. The recovery was worse than labor, honestly. And if you've ever had a baby, I'm sure that you can relate to that. Recovery was hell on earth. It was awful. I hated it. It was very painful, especially since I had to have an episiotomy with my son. So that was just extra painful and having to heal. But it's better than tearing, you know, that's what the doctor said. She was like, I'm gonna have to cut you or else you're gonna tear. And I was like, no, I don't think you should cut me. Like, I don't think so. Like, I was trying to have a full-on conversation with my doctor while trying to push this kid out. And she's like, if I don't cut you, you're going to tear. And I was like, I still don't think you should do it. That feels like it'll hurt. And so she was like, okay, let me take these tweezers and pinch you. And if you can feel it, I won't do it. And I was like, okay. She pinched me and I didn't feel it. And she's like, okay, well, I'm doing this episiotomy. So anyway, had to have that. So that's what made recovery suck. It was just the whole process. Like I said, if you've had a baby, you know about it, and it's not the best, but you know, at least I had some great nurses, some great doctors, great hospital staff at the hospital where I gave birth. So it was overall a really good experience. Those nurses that helped me in the 2 or 3 days after I gave birth literally taught me like everything about how to be a mom in such a short period of time. I'm just so grateful for them and for everything that they did for me and all the help that they gave me. It's just, they are saints, angels walking on this earth, okay? They were amazing. And all the pediatric nurses that would, you know, the baby nurses that would come in and take my son and do his stuff and all of that. And we had to stay an extra day because he had jaundice, so he had to be under the light for like a whole day. Really thankful for the nurses that helped with that took care of him when he was doing all of the light treatments. But yeah, that's my birth story. It was a little bit crazy, but I think they all are. I didn't go into it with a plan. I figured there was no point when nothing ever really goes to plan anyway. Overall, I feel like it went the best way it possibly could have, you know. It's gonna happen the way it's gonna happen. It's not up to you, it's up to your child how it's gonna go. I'm really glad I didn't have to have a C-section. I was kind of worried about it, but I was open to it. Obviously, if it's necessary, go ahead. But I am glad, having done it naturally, that I didn't have to have a C-section. I'm really glad. Recovery was rough, but it didn't last too long. By like 5.5 weeks postpartum, I was completely healed. 6 weeks, totally healed. When I went back to my 6-week checkup, I was totally good to go. So yeah, that's what happened with me. Feel free to comment down below. Tell me about your birth story. Leave me a like if you like the video. Subscribe if you like what I'm doing here. If you want to see more of my content, I make new videos every Monday and Friday. Thank you guys once again so much for joining me today, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.